So cool. And now that we are at the top of the hour, good morning or afternoon, folks. Happy Monday. My name is Bobby Mann. I'm the Chief Program Officer for Humane Rescue Alliance. We'll also be joined by Ed Jameson today, who will be doing his intro and carrying us through our amazing presentation today. So excited to have you all here. So grateful that you're all sharing the beginning of your week with us. Today's going to be a great day. We're going to be talking about things that I personally believe are incredibly critical to the future of our work, which is really focusing on having a community-centric model, partnering with our community, and making sure that we're utilizing the folks that are touching our community more than almost anybody else, our field services officers. So Vincent Medley is going to be joining us from Human Animal Support Services to talk all about that later today. But before we get into that, we want to start it off with a question of the day. So we are going to ask you, we know you all have your dream jobs because we get to work in animal welfare, but if you did not work in animal welfare, what would you be doing? So feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat. I know there was a couple folks that already had started before the call. So I'm going to scroll back up here and see. I thought I saw someone said they wanted to be a worm farmer. Did someone mention that? Someone unmute and tell me why you want to be a worm farmer.
So Bobby, it's me again, Nancy Collins from Bella Vista, Arkansas.
Hey, Nancy.
Bella Vista Animal Shelter. So I got into vermilla composting a while back, and I just think it's the greatest thing in the world. So I take all my kitchen scraps, I have some worms, and now I give out kits to all my friends, and I'm trying to reduce waste in the world by getting people to compost their kitchen waste. And I think it's fascinating. Worms are amazing, and I absolutely love growing them. I don't have enough yet to make it a business, but if I had the time, I would put my passions behind that, because I'm actually working with a local composter, and we're trying to do animal waste now. So I'll let you know how that turns out.
Oh my gosh. First off, that's amazing. And I promise you, this plastic bottle I have, this is the 19th time I've used it. It's gross. I should not still be using it, but because I opened it, I have to keep going hard.
Well, that
anyone
can be
else?
dangerous too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will make sure I don't leave it in my car or do anything crazy like that.
So if anybody wants to know about worms, I'm your gal.
Thanks, Nancy. Stacey, you want to be a travel blogger and tour guide. What inspired you to do that? Have you taken any cool trips that have just made you want to change your career?
Yeah, so it didn't make me want to change my career. I've been in animal welfare since I think I started my first job in animal welfare at 15, but I took a break in my 20s to do a lot of traveling and worked abroad in New Zealand. And I think that if I could get away with it professionally, I'd probably maybe do that, at least for a while.
And Stacey, would you mind letting folks know what you do and where you're at and why you love it?
Yeah, so I'm up just outside Portland, Oregon at Washington County Animal Services and the Bonnie Hayes Animal Shelter in Hillsboro, Oregon. And I'm the Animal Behavior and Outreach Coordinator. And there I work mostly in communications.
Awesome. All right, I got to pick on Laura Connors, because if you're going to drop the SNL on us right now, you got to take the stage. So Laura, over to you. What makes you want to be an SNL performer?
So, well, first of all, to start off, I don't actually work in animal welfare. I am the treasurer on the board of directors of an all-volunteer animal welfare organization. I actually work at Mattel. I love performing and I love skit comedy. And I just think that being an SNL performer would be so much fun. And just, you know, all that interaction and all that improvisation and I don't know, to me, it just seems like the best job you could possibly have. So, and the organization that I volunteer with here in Missouri is TNR Patrol. So we are working towards controlling the, feral cat population through trap, neuter, release programs, which is a huge problem here.
And is that you in your background picture?
That is me in my background.
So can you ever like disappear from your meeting and people are so full of themselves and calls, they just assume that it's you and don't even pay attention?
You know what? I haven't tried it because I actually love my job, but I might try it and see if I can or not.
Yeah, call the science experiment. I love it. Well,
That's
folks, please continue to drop those in the chat. I'd love to hear what you would do outside of the work that you're doing in animal welfare. But for the sake of time, I'm going to keep us moving forward and open it up for national updates. If you have a national update, please unmute and say hello.
Hello, this is Vincent from I am the Maddie's director of the Human Animal Support Services Project. I'll be speaking later, but I also wanted to make sure that everybody had on there. This week we have a webinar, Navigating Compassion Fatigue and Animal Welfare, How to Combat Burnout and Enhance Resiliency. And that is our guest speaker for that webinar is Hillary Hager, one of the vice presidents for the Humane Society of the United States, their outreach, engagement, and training department.
Thanks, Vincent.
Thanks so much, Vincent. I was also going to announce that as it's besides being Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. So we do want to emphasize these resources for you. The Maddie's Pet Forum also has some resources on compassion fatigue and a previous recording of Jessica Dolce speaking on low impact debriefing, sharing our stories safely. So I'm not a medical professional, but we know that whether it's from being in this field or not, many of us might be survivors of pain, loss, trauma, various struggles. So just putting a gentle reminder out there to be kind to yourselves, practice self-care, and that includes reaching out for help. And as a reminder, next Monday, we will be observing Memorial Day. So please enter to win the Maddie's Fund monthly giveaways for joining us today and watching any of the May community conversations on demand. Thanks so much, everyone.
Irene, you might not be a medical professional, but it sounds like you play one on TV and you would have gotten a freaking Emmy for that one. So shout out to you. Happy AAPI month to you as well, sister. Let's keep it going. Anybody else? National update?
I just want to say happy belated National Rescue Dog Day. That was on Friday.
That's dope. Happy National Rescue Dog Day.
I'm sorry, it was Saturday.
What did you do to celebrate, Amy?
What did I do to celebrate? So I'm from Green Mountain Pug Rescue up in New England. We celebrated by welcoming 3 beautiful pug puppy babies. We rescued a mother that was part of a hoarding situation in Long Island. And we were surprised to know that she was pregnant. And so she was like more than halfway through and she delivered beautiful pug puppies.
You know, Amy, when I met you, I knew you were about that pug life, but it wasn't until right now that I knew how deep you were in it. So respect.
I'm so deeply in it. And just because I have her to say hello. This is my current foster. She is a Chihuahua pug mix, also lovingly known as a Chug. And so she's going to be adopted here in a few weeks after she has her dental.
You know, that dog has such an awesomely concerning face. I could see it being so many animal welfare memes to remove barriers. Like that face with the ears would be like, you still do home inspection? The ears. I love it. Thanks, Amy. All right, we have one last minute to go. Anybody else like to share? Wow, well, thanks for making it so easy on me, folks. Well, without further ado, I'm glad we have ample time. I'm going to toss it over to our other co-host, Ed Jamison, to get our presentation kicked off.
Hey, thank you, Bob. When we went through the topics and we were talking about the different speakers that come up, when Vincent's name came up, I was excited for a multitude of reasons, but I would be remiss to say, and I don't know that I've actually said this to Vincent, but he is the first Black shelter leader that I met. I think I was working for the city of Cleveland at this time. And I couldn't find anybody else who looked like me, who did what I did. We were at a national conference. The topic was a good topic. Everybody loves Vincent. I didn't know that at the time because I didn't know him, but like, oh my gosh, Vincent, this guy is awesome. And it really took me because I didn't know that there were people that looked like me that could actually, that other people that looked like me that ran shelters, and particularly in the government world. So that kicked off some great discussions. He's worked at some super big, super fast, crazy organizations over the years. And then we reconnected, I think, when the world opened back up last year at HSUS in Orlando. We had not seen each other or talked in quite some time. And was super happy to see him, and I'm super glad that he is back into the animal world. We are a much better place with Vincent in the animal welfare space than when he's not in it. Topic today, we're going to be talking about de-escalation for field services and employing a community-centric approach. I know that, you know, we had to re-envision things as the world started changing due to COVID. And one of the things on this topic was actually Bobby that I had talked to about it was that, hey, do you have to 100% buy in and 100% on every single tenets of some of this new way of looking? And the answer is no. It's that, hey, in any new way of looking, in any way of trying to engage. So again, as things change and weave through this space, I think that the progression and that Vincent is now leading the charge here to have these discussions, I think is super more than appropriate. So you don't want or need to hear from me anymore on this. Let's get to the man of the hour. And we're very happy to welcome Vincent Medley. Vincent, it is all yours, my man.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you for the kind introduction. And I was thinking about you this morning because, yeah, I do remember when we first met at that conference, and everybody who knows Ed knows he has, and I have told Ed this, he has a Midas touch when it comes to being a shelter leader that I just frankly don't have myself. I do some things really well, and I try to focus on those, but it's an honor to share the stage with you, and on the note of people of color that are part of leadership in the animal sheltering world, whether it's you or Bobby, who the two of us met even before I started at Haas, and we just connected like on some other brotherly level, so it was real. Likewise, seeing you, Ed, in your leadership positions and how effective you have been, and then seeing Bobby and just seeing this dynamic, younger superstar, I was just like, wow, okay, things are changing. Because as some of you may know, I was in the movement for 17 years, and I took like a 3-year break to regenerate, and because of a lot of things, compassion fatigue and a number of different things. And being at those big shelters. And so today's topic is really timely because there's a couple of things that are happening here with de-escalation. Number one, it addresses a group of people that I feel like is often forgotten in animal welfare. It's almost looked like as the other side of animal. They're like animal welfare, and then there's animal control officers or animal service officers. And the problem is what I've found in my work is that, the animal control, the field services is an essential part of animal welfare. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So just to give you a little bit about myself, like introduction is I am the Maddie's Director of Human Animal Support Services. And I believe that people and pets belong together no matter what their income is or where they live. And I think one of the reasons why this position is something that I wanted to be part of is the fact that I have been in so many different parts of the animal welfare world, and I've learned from so many people. I'm one of those people that wants to know everything and everybody, and that's why I put private investigator as my dream position, or what I would be doing if I wasn't in this, because I love being in people's business. So that's kind of my approach to work, as well as anything that's going on that was going on in the shelter when I was coming up. I would just gravitate to it to find out and learn more about it. So not only did I get a strong foundation in being an animal controller, animal service officer, but I also got a really strong foundation in animal sheltering and making those shelters better, which is why I think my career progressed, and I became a leader in some of the big shelters. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I started in 1999. I worked for the Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, the city of Philadelphia. Well, we were a nonprofit that had a contract with the city of Philadelphia. It's the Isleta Pueblo Indian Reservation here in New Mexico, where I currently live, and then also was I worked for the Humane Society of the United States. To give you a little bit of history about in terms of what qualifies me to speak on this subject is I've seen a lot. So the guys that and generally it was men, but I did get trained by some women as well that that trained me. Some of them started in the 70s. I remember my training officer, one of my training officers, Steve Barrow, he had been there 30 years when I started, and I started in 1999. So I come from a long tradition of training that was really an old school way of enforcing the law. And I'm so happy to say that I take their experiences, but also my own experiences, and really learned to why it was important to change the way we do things in animal services and animal law enforcement and investigations. I can conservatively say that I have been over enforcement agencies that have had 1 million calls of service in it in total. So not in a year, but all of the different places, you know. So for instance, I was in Dallas for 6 years, and that was 100,000 calls a year. And Houston was not smaller. It was, you know, probably more than Dallas. And then San Antonio was 90,000 calls a year. And I was there for 8 years. So that's where I got my numbers from. During that time, I investigated and supervised dozens of felony level and misdemeanor investigations. I mean, I worked with everybody from the federal government to obviously our local, which is, you know, more often. And I've just been seeing the highs and the lows and the benefits and some of the negatives of enforcement, and also what we'll be talking about, some of the over enforcement. And I started community-oriented police and community-oriented enforcement in 2009. So I've been practicing it a long time. Certain elements of it, just to give you a quick story. The first time I practiced it, I was pretty much forced, because I had an animal cruelty case. This person was what we would call a hoarder, but now we call it collector. That person's house had probably 50 or 60 cats. And I was this gung-ho young animal control sergeant. And I went to my captain and I was like, we have this case. I want to pull them all in. We want to get a warrant, all of that stuff. And talked to him. He said, go talk to our veterinarian, Dr. Morris. I went to talk to Dr. Morris. Dr. Morris was like, Vincent, we can't bring all those cats in here. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm enforcing the law. I'm an animal avenger. And she was like, what are we going to do with them? Where are we going to put them? Like, we only have so many cages, and we can't bring a bunch of sick animals, because a lot of these cats had upper respiratory and all of the, all of the menu of issues that cats that are in a situation like that have. So I had met somebody who had basically asked me before I started it. Well, at the beginning of my investigation, she was a community advocate, and she just said, Vincent, just let me help you. And, working for the city, and me, the type of person that, I was one of those officers. I tucked my boots in my pants. Like, that's the type of officer I was. And I thought I was, G.I. Joe. I jumped out of the vehicle like Patton's Third Army. So I was just like, I don't need your help. I'm the city. And once I talked to Dr. Morris, and I realized these cats, whether you think you're a superhero or not, these cats are not going to be removed from this situation without some help. So I called that community advocate for cats, and she and I are friends to this day. And I just said, hey, can you do all of the stuff that you told me you can do, that you can to help me. And we did one of the first times I've ever heard about it is we basically went into this person's house and helped them clean their house. We got volunteers. I helped, Rebecca helped, who was the advocate I'm talking about. And we helped her isolate the cats into one room and slowly remove the cats out and get those cats to get the medical care and then to permanent placement. So that was the first time I had been involved in that. And I thinking back, I wish we would have documented that case, because not only was the feedback terrific. So for instance, what we did with the person that we assisted, one of the first things we did for her is we talked to her about, wouldn't it be great to have a space in your house back for you? We cleaned her bedroom. And she now had her own space. I remember to this day her alarm clock being there, just and her room being clean. And she was so thankful and appreciative of for the fact that we had looked at her and said, okay, this is not, we want to help her as a person. And by helping her as a person, we help the animals. And I set all that up just to say, I didn't come to this realization without understanding the circumstances and the resources. I had no other choice, but I knew two things. I wanted to help the person and I wanted to help those animals. And the tools that the gods gave me at that time was enforcement. But experience taught me that there was something more than enforcement that would be involved, that it takes. So this is why this is such a great position for me, being the director of the Human Animal Support Services Project, because one of the things we look at is that animal services, we want to reinvent it, and by that we want to replace the current system with a community-centric model. Okay, and we also want to partner with rescue groups and a lot of other people that we'll talk about that will support us in this goal. Some of the elements of the house model are lost pet reunification, pet support services, supported self-rehoming, intake to placement, field services and safety. All of these things are part of our model. Community partnerships, a foster-centric model, remote customer service, case management, which is providing a pathway for animals and the people that are part of their families and the people that want them to find a way to either provide them with resources, whether it's in the shelter or outside the shelter in the community, and volunteer integration. Those are some of the elements of HAAS. So if you really went to our website and you partook in a lot of our educational information, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about today are things that you would be very well versed in and made aware of. I wanted to, before we start, to set things up a little bit about what we are going to talk about or who we're talking about, and why this community-centric model is so important. Is there was a study done, Maddie's and the University of Tennessee partnered their School of Social Work. And for those of you that don't know, the University of Tennessee has a veterinary social work program. And the name of the report is Access to Veterinary Care, Barriers, Current Practices, and Public Policy. And what it articulates is that there are, plenty of socioeconomic circumstances that are involved in the lack of veterinary care and adequate services that are provided to families with pets. And I can tell you that one of the number one things as an animal cruelty investigator when I was out in the field was a lack of veterinary care and a lack of resources for pet owners. And that's even the ones that could afford them, especially if they lived in certain neighborhoods. Because, so for instance, in the neighborhood I live in right now, I can drive by PetSmart, Petco, a couple other local pet stores here, and get supplies and services. And I also have probably 3 or 4 veterinary clinics right in my immediate area that I could take my animal to. Well, even if I had the money in certain neighborhoods that I lived in, I think about the one I lived in San Antonio, I think there might have been one. And a lot of people live in these deserts that are prohibit them or make it less likely, especially in this busy world we live in, and people having to work and things absorbing a lot of their time that they sometimes have to prioritize above taking their animal to the vet, just like all of us prioritize not going to the doctor, other things above going to the doctor. That happens too for pets and people. And I think that's something we should keep in mind, especially when we're out there in the field. Not everybody is an enemy. According to the U.S. Census, the United States residents living in poverty by race, it's 1 in 10 white people, 1 in 10 Asians, 1 in 5 Latinos, 1 in 4 African Americans, and the Native American and Alaska Native is 1 in 4 people living in poverty. That's a significant number of people in poverty. And I will say this too, because we won't be able to get into this just because this is a gigantic topic. Like, I actually do a day-long training, and as you can see, some of these slides were borrowed from the presentation I helped create for the Humane Society of the United States, but I think it all blends together. All of these things are part of a part of a system that, if you look at your call volume at your shelter, you will find that the majority of your calls, especially when it comes to animal cruelty and neglect, which we're going to talk about a lot, or even violations as a whole, come from areas where people have a lower income. And who are the people that we're talking about that are pet owners? What does a pet owner look like? We're talking about people that we see every day. These are the people that we see, whether it is, because I've investigated police officers for animal cruelty, even with their canine officer partner. You see a homeless person here. You see a woman propped up against her at a clinic. You see a woman in her home kissing her cat. As you can see, other people. So we see people of different backgrounds, and pet owners look like us. You know, some of them are famous, but most of them are just the person that we see every day. So let's talk a little bit about de-escalation and why it's so important. There's several reasons. There's a lot of reasons why it's important, but I pulled out a couple from my presentations just to give you an idea of why it is important. Officer safety. I can't tell you how going to a door with the approach of having a de-escalated approach or community-oriented approach is so much. So for instance, when I'm driving to a call and I know that call is, and I get I know information on that call, or I look in the system and I see what address it is or where it is. An officer is going to, for me, especially when I was younger, my adrenaline would start pumping. So I get to that door and the only thing I'm thinking about is enforcement. Well, when I converted to a more community-centric model, my mindset changed to where, okay, we're going to assess the situation to see what services can be provided. And we'll talk about how we do that in this presentation as well. You're creating community empowerment and community partnerships. That's very important. The question is, what's the more powerful place to stand for you as an agency or an organization? Is it in the idea that you're going to judge people and turn everybody into the enemy? Or is it that you're going to partner with people and see them as a resource and as the key resource in helping the pets in the community and the dogs and the cats in the community and even in a lot of cases, wildlife in the community. So partnering with them in a way that takes down that veil of you are the enemy, you've come in, especially with animal control or animal services, because we all often are looked at as that quote unquote, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. I'm sorry. I apologize to all my brother and sister animal service officers, and is dog catcher. And we're coming into the community to take animals out. And we used to have a slick term. I don't catch, I used to use it a lot. I don't catch dogs and cats, I catch owners. And okay, fine, catch the owner. That's what I would tell young Vincent, catch him. But when you catch him, this is what I want you to do that's different than what you've been taught to do. And then also it keeps family and people together, which is the theme of one of our pilot shelters with the Human Animal Support Services project, our partner or pilot shelter in Kansas City, the KC Pet Project. Keep in mind that we have, and I keep in mind that we have conflicting voices that we have to listen to when we work for a government shelter. It's not as simple and easy as most people sometimes, especially on the outside, think it is. We have people that think that there's too many animals on the street. Pick them all up. I don't care what you do with them. Just grab them up and take them to the shelter because that's the best place for them. And that's a real pressure for animal service agencies, because remember, they are paid by the city, and the people that are calling in to report these things are their residents within the city. So they have an obligation to go out and investigate, and sometimes they do have to take action. And then there's the other side of people that want to stop the euthanasia in the shelters. And there's so many great programs that we can talk about, but we also know that advocacy and that a lot of the activists that are part of the Stop the Euthanasia was really one of the big ways that I can say I saw government shelters change. Without that outside pressure, the model wouldn't have changed from a catch and kill model that just saw us rounding up animals, warehousing them because of rabies, and then eventually with no program, and the pet owner doesn't come to pick their animal up for many reasons. And a lot of them are barriers that we talked about. Time, do they know where the shelter is? The fees that are involved in picking an animal up from the shelter, and the fines, and then also the judgment walking into the door. Some components of the some of the components of an effective de-escalation program are laws that support that de-escalation. So, for instance, I remember when we were started practicing trap, neuter, return, and I know there's different names for it. SNR, there's return to field. There's different names now for it, but back when it was called TNR, the laws started being enacted to give officers specific permission to pick an animal up, get it sterilized in the shelter, and bring it back out into the field. A law like that is extremely important because it helps the officer go out there and do their job without feeling like they're getting caught by the public. Internal policies and procedures. You've got to have a process and policies and procedures to guide the officers' movements and their conduct out in the field, because that is what they use to do their job. Along with policies and procedures, without training, you're going to have a tough time. So training, internal training, there's also national training, like for instance, National Animal Control Association. There's also the Law Enforcement Training Center for the HSUS, and then the Law Enforcement Training Institute for the University of Missouri. There's plenty of training out there. And if I'm forgetting anybody, please forgive me or put your agency in the chat, because I'd love to know that as well. But also some type of program, which is why I have our Lifeline partners or Pilot Shelter Lifeline, one of their flyers from a recent event that they did for an event called Healthy Pets, which you need a program as well. So it's not only training the officer, but providing the field services staff with some program that will support it. Hey, we want you to get your animal vaccinated. Guess what? We have a vaccination at, in this case, at Honeysuckle Park in Duraville, Georgia, which is local. And what's been so great about, especially some of the programs I've been a part of, is you have that program in walking distance to the people that are in the most need, and they can walk their dog or carry their cat in a crate to the park and get it done all in that same day. But then also, one of the last things that I think people forget within a shelter is incentive. Another thing that I hear a lot of is that you know, officers are slow to change, or that field service staff and shelter staff in general are slow to change. Incentivize that, whether it be through performance plans, or find ways to reward and the staff and the so that you do change the culture. There's a lot more to it, but these are some of the basic elements that you want to have this also as part of your strategic plan. There's just really granular. It's like I said, this is an all-day course actually, and maybe even more than that. So a recent article that May of 2022 that was that we had in our in one of our HOS blogs is that animal welfare has a cruelty to people problem. And not only is within the shelter, but it was something I was taught when I was an officer in the field, that people, you know, if you can't afford an animal, don't have one. So issue the person citations and find a way to get that animal out of that person's hands. And what happens, it becomes that, I mean, everything becomes, it's like that saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and everything becomes an enforcement issue. And so if the person's horrible, of course they can't have animals. If they're a shitty human, excuse my French, of course they don't need an animal. If they live in their vehicle, no, you can't have an animal. I mean, like, how many barriers are we going there? You know what's crazy is we have zero barriers pretty much to get an animal vacuumed into the shelter, but we have all of these barriers to get them out. And so, boy, and the officer is the easiest way, especially considering the fact that the officer feels like they're doing their job when they are out there enforcing and picking animals up. It is an actual, like, I have, you know, this is my metric. I picked up 15 animals today, right? That's a metric that we would have, that we had at some of my past shelters. And now we realize that, no, that's not the way to look at it, because the shelter is the last place an animal needs to be. The only animals that need to be there are the animals that are in the greatest need and no longer have a home. And if they have that home, are in a dangerous situation that can no longer be allowed to stay in that home, or that they're a danger to the public as well. You know, so pets versus people. We have, in animal welfare, we have been very good at making that like it's, you either like animals or you like people. We used to, you know, I remember so many people, and apparently it's still like that in some places today. That's, you know, the reason why they work in an animal shelter is because they love animals, but they hate people. And what all of us have come to realize is that, number one, well, and it's worse when you talk about officers. The vast majority of interactions a person working in a shelter or in the field is going to be with people. And especially an officer, you generally are going to interact with way more people, especially on a material level, than you are with animals. And so, and I often wonder, if I was if any one of us was in an interview, getting interviewed by the shelter, and we said, I love people, but I hate animals, I wonder if that person would get hired. I bet you they wouldn't. But we did the reverse without a second thought. And it's something to keep in mind as you are looking at your so imagine if we invested in people, and if we looked at the people and the animal as equal. So I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with somebody in animal welfare, And we were talking just about this subject, and she said, you know, Vincent, we always get calls about homeless people that are outside with their pet. They get calls from the 311 will get calls, and it'll say, the person will say, there's a homeless person out here with this animal. They're not, that animal's not taken care of. Number one, as an animal cruelty investigator, I don't think I've ever investigated a homeless person for animal cruelty. And as I drive around even my city that's, you know, known for homelessness, it's not as big as other places I've lived, but there's quite a few. I see animals with healthy body weights for the most part. I definitely don't see any that look like they're starving, that are, you know, that belong to a homeless person. But you know what that person said to me? She also said to me, I wonder how many times a person has called 311 and said, hey, you know, there's a homeless person out here. Are there any resources for homeless people that I can provide them? You know, I'd love for you to do that as an experiment. Go to your city 311 or whoever takes the calls for human services in your community or in your municipal government, and ask them, you know, how many calls you get of that nature. And I would be shocked. Please email me if the number is large. I'd be shocked if it is, because we just place such a higher value on animals, or at least we use the animal to help us judge people, and justify taking the animal away from that person. So I have a question for all of you. What is the largest outreach team in animal welfare? This is something that I've been preaching for so long. I'll give you a couple of hints if the picture doesn't tell you. They are commonly asked to address community reported issues, and they see the problem at the port of origin. Not only that, they're like the post office. They drive block to block. And in fact, it's so funny, when I would have an issue out in the field with finding an animal that may have been reported to be a dangerous animal or whatever, or I needed to find a certain animal or where an animal lived. If a postal carrier was in the neighborhood, I would find that postal carrier and say, hey, do you know that, you know, I'll describe this animal to you. Do you know where it lives? So we're out there. The officer is out there. The question is this: we play with the toys the gods give us. Now, when I started in 1999, the gods gave me a ticket book, a catch pole, and a badge, and an attitude. And all of those things were part of my uniform. And you go out there, and I already told you that we looked at a lot of the sentiment inside the shelter was that the public was the enemy, or the pet owner was the enemy, especially if they couldn't afford an animal or they let their animal run loose. And so the question is, with this outreach team that we have called animal service officers, what are the gods giving them? And I would humbly propose, that you provide them with support and services and all of those things we talked about in that earlier slide: policy, law, training, to have a different outcome when they go out in the field. So a lot of what we are dealing with is the idea that we need to punish people. And let's think about this. And this is a true story. I once issued a citation to a person who their dog was running loose and they didn't have a rabies tag, and that person had an attitude with them. So I hit them up with citations. They didn't pay their citations, and it was an easy fix. All they had to do was come to the shelter, pay, show that they got their animal vaccinated, pay for an animal license. And in this case, which is not often the case, this person lived right around the corner from the shelter. It was like 3 or 4 blocks. So that person, they didn't take care of the citation. They didn't realize that our citations was the same citation that the police used. So what happened when they didn't show up to court? You guessed it, they got a warrant for their arrest. That person then got that warrant for their arrest. They avoided the warrant, ended up getting picked up and taken to jail. It cost them $800, and this was back in the early 2000s, to get bonded out of jail And then, and not to mention the fact when they got locked up, and this was in the city of Dallas, they got locked up with all the rest of the people that was doing some really hideous things. They didn't go to a special jail for people who violated animal law. They got put in big boy jail or big girl jail. They had to sit in jail with these people. They lost time from their job. Who knows if they got fired for missing time. They had to pay $800, and that's before they even come to court and get assessed a fine for the violations, which were at minimum $125, and I issued this person 2 citations. Now at this point, it's too late for them to comply. So we're talking about over $1,000 and going to jail because their animal was running loose. What kind of spin cycle did I put those people in? What kind of pain? I asked myself, what kind of pain did I cause in that person's family? I didn't care at the time because, you know what, I was just, it was up to them. They should have done it themselves. And the reality is that there's a different way to do it, and that keeps families together. And I take ownership of the pain I know I caused in the community because I was one of those gung-ho officers. Like, at some points, I think it would have been better off if I was a lazy officer because at least people had a chance. But I was one of those people that prided myself on citations and enforcement.
Vincent, you sharing your lived experiences and the accountability you're taking is absolutely giving all of us goosebumps. I wish you could see the chat and just how people are just living for this. This is just your requested 5-minute time check. Just buzzing in to let you know.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. All right. So so some considerations. I'm going to give you some considerations. So one of the approaches that I would recommend you use is a civil citation process. And we're going to zip through these slides because I want to get to as many as possible. And just stop me, Bobby, because it's like I said, we only have 5 minutes. Which is less punitive and doesn't involve the person having to go to jail. And it also could allow you to do some really cool things like creating an indigent fund that allows the officer not only to go to court in place of the person and advocate for that person, but also to provide a fund that would help people and pets. Also, I would also, as an alternative, notices in lieu of citations is also another. Here's a slide I really want to get to: education and outreach, a return to field, microchipping clinics doing door-to-door outreach when you have programs, tabling events, and animal control follow-up assistance where you actually empower your officers to help the person resolve the problem, whether it's fixing a fence, a cable lead for their animal that lives outdoors, and then also spay and neuter transport, creating community partnerships with nonprofit social services, veterinary clinics, local pet and focused businesses. Having, like I said, fence fixing programs, a trolley for animals that live outdoors. Recommend that the owner get that animal altered so they don't roam. Explain to the owner where to leash, where to leash or provide one. And then also recommend the officer purchase a crate or dog crate so the animal can stay inside at night. For things like grooming, which is another issue out there in the community, having a partnership with grooming services, having some type of relationship with a dog walker, being aware of the low cost clinics in the area, and also low and zero cost clinics if you're not partnering, and then also being able to provide some grooming for the person on site if you're able to do that, or you can partner with someone. As far as pets and food supplies, when you think about going out there and an animal is not being fed, or even if you're dealing with a homeless situation, provide some type of intervention for that person, whether it be a food bank that you know, or a food pantry that you are aware of, or also have your officers carry pet food if you're able to have pet donations for your at your shelter. And then also look at the animal's visible weight and their behavior, because not everything involves you calling an animal, either whether it's calling for animal services or the officer going out there and feeling like they've got to enforce the law against that person. Some potential solutions to that is a social media pass programs. One of our website we're partnered with, Pet Stop Find Help, community partnerships, some national programs, and also some federal grants that could help you as well. If you are in terms of serious health issues, understand the difference between neglect and animal cruelty. Neglect a lot of times can be addressed through partnerships in the community, whereas cruelty is like dog fighting, intentional things where an animal is being intentionally hurt. And understand the laws within your community, and also as an animal service officer, understand what you can and can't do when it comes to the law. Once again, we'll talk about Pet Stop Find Help and external facing medical care, build sustainability through that, and then also create creating in-shelter support within your shelter, and then also utilize existing veterinary practices. Some people can start a facility from scratch. I know there's plenty of partnerships like that I've been involved with, and seek assistance from the veterinary community like vets and vet techs. As far as housing an animal, understand what your laws are, but then also find a way to see if there's ways for you to get donations to provide housing for that pet. There's nothing wrong with giving somebody a doghouse rather than issuing them a citation. And there's plenty of animal shelters that provide those types of services even today. So in summary, just keep these things in mind. 70% of families own some type of pet, and that includes all pets. It's not just dogs or cats. And so you're going to encounter them at some point or the other. And that's probably across the board within every community, 70%. Creating partnerships and programs to help provide support for these families. And also, you can be part of the solution by building those partnerships, understanding the community need, and being open to problem solve, providing solutions to the pet owners. So thank you. That's all I have. It's like I said, it's a big presentation. It generally is, 3 to 4 hours or all day, but I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vincent. And Bobby, thank you for getting us all kicked off. I know that we're out of time, but let's kick this conversation over to the pet forum where we can continue this on. And again, I think, Vincent, I really thank you. I hope you know how much that myself and a lot of other people in the industry actually really look up to you. And we're super happy that you decided to come back to the industry, and we're super happy to have you on the call here today. Thank you so much. To everybody else, again, we will be taking next week off. Have a wonderful Memorial Day. Try to relax if you can. I know that we may not really be taking days out of the shelter, but if you have that opportunity, please enjoy your family and take some time. And we look forward to seeing everybody the week after. Bobby, do you have anything else?
You're the GOAT, Vincent. People are going to follow you to that forum. We love you, man.
Hey,
Keep up the great work.
I'll see
Happy
you all
Monday,
on the
everyone.
forum. Oh yeah, see you all on the
Here.
forum. Thank you, guys.